Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There it is, so you don't miss any of our football content this season. It has been, if I might say, fantastic. Our Week 10 reaction presented by Uber Eats. Get game day deals all season long on Uber Eats. Now, before we get into this week's analysis, I just got to say, and maybe you can relate to this, watching football, talking about football, thinking about football, I don't know what it is. It just gets my appetite going. I start thinking about burgers and wings and tacos, all the game day stuff I love to eat. Fortunately, when that happens, all I have to do is reach for my Uber Eats app and order up wherever it is that I happen to be craving. Oh, let's see what I got today. Taco Bell, baby. Perfect timing. Game day deliveries dialed in. With Uber Eats, you can actually score buy one, get one free Crunchwrap Supremes from Taco Bell now through November 17th. Perfect for all the game day cravings, or even for your day after game cravings, anytime, really. As the official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL, Uber Eats is keeping the deals going all season long, so we're taking out some must-grab deals on burritos, burgers, nachos, tacos, whatever, all season long. Order Taco Bell on Uber Eats now for game day. Terms apply. See the app for details. Have fun. Oh, my God. Sorry to eat on camera. Oh, my God, it's so good. No. I'm good. All right, it's Sunday. We got a lot to break down. There's a lot of moving parts today. We got Aaron Rodgers has become Michael Jordan with the Wizards, among other things. I want to start with a game. I thought it was the lock of the year. San Francisco by a touchdown over Tampa. San Francisco beats Tampa 23-20. At one point, I was rooting for Baker Mayfield. He was playing so hard. They're grabbing his face. I mean, the kid was just... And the Niners special teams are so bad. I think it cost him total 16 points today. I could be missing. And Brock Purdy had a wonderful last drive. But this game wasn't close. I was just looking at total yards. San Francisco had averaged almost double per yards per play. Brock Purdy was 25 of 36, 353 yards, 2 touchdowns. The fact it was close, to me, is an indictment on Shanahan. These special teams now are in the running for the worst in the league. And you know the Niners as well as anybody. What did you make of that mess?
Yeah, I just think it's an overall embarrassment. And Debo gets into it with the long snapper when he just tells the guys to lock in. Like, I'm sorry, the long snapper and the kicker are like to me, they are, in theory, should be the most irrelevant, never should be heard of or seen guy in the company, and yet with the 49ers, their special teams unit always somehow overshadows the offense and the defense. And to me, it's on the head coach. Like, he does not care about special teams, which most people don't, right? If you're going to go to the driving range, you usually don't spend any time putting, but you probably should. But no one ever does. Just like think about McVay, LaFleur, and Kyle. The 3 top young offensive guys, all their special teams usually are pretty bad.
Yeah.
Why? Because they do not care. Who are the 2 old guys? Andy and Belichick. What did they always take really seriously? Special teams. Because in this is not college, where if your team is so good, it doesn't really matter. All these games, the majority of them, unless you're the Jets, are close. And today, to miss the field goals, if the guy's not healthy, he rolls his ankle, he can't be out there kicking field goals, Colin. Now, I understand you draft him in the 3rd round, you're not going to cut him, but that's a pretty big injury for a kicker. A high ankle sprain. Clearly, he was not ready. It wasn't even close. They got very lucky that he made that game-winning field goal. I also think there's a coach, Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator I hear all these names. That guy should be on everyone's interview list. Because for that, I thought them and the Chiefs were both the Broncos and the Niners today, coming off that Monday night game, both teams exhausted. Tampa threw, all their chips in the middle of the table in that game. The Chiefs are just exhausted, whatever. Home game against the Broncos. Thought both would really be flat. The Chiefs kind of were what we expected. The Bucs were fighting their ass off. I mean, how well Baker's played. He's dramatically better than he was last year, and he was good last year.
No question.
So I just think the 49ers special teams is a reflection of their head coach who does not care. It'd be like if we had audio issues, right, all over the volume. Like eventually it's like, wouldn't that be kind of on you? Like, okay, it happens, whatever. But Colin, he does not care. And it's every single week now, their special teams are killing them.
I also thought about something because Brock Purdy in the fourth was fantastic. 10 of 14, a touchdown, over 100 yards. Brock kind of saved him, played really, really well down the stretch. But Ricky Pearsall had a game today. And my takeaway was, I don't know how great he'll be, but with all George Kittle, that play in the back of the end zone, God, George is great.
How good's he been this season? He makes plays every week for them.
He's like old Gronk. Whenever you doubt him, Travis Kelce, same thing. But the Brandon Ayuk signing now, is that what they miss? Ricky Pearsall's here. Kittle's still an elite tight end. Christian McCaffrey back. He wasn't great today. I just thought they averaged 6.8 yards per play. Tampa averaged 3.7 yards per play. How it's close is remarkable. And when I would tell
penalties too killed them. They had so many defensive penalties, hands to the face mask, that were just killers, Colin, on third down that gave them life.
It's I know Kyle Shanahan is a good coach, but I do feel like this organization leaks a lot of oil and we don't call them out a lot because they mostly win. Wasn't this the first time they'd won back-to-back games all season?
It has to be. They're 5-4. To me, coming off a bye with a team that is running on fumes, that just played in an overtime game on the road on Monday night, whose best players, their best player on the team is on the sideline with a hamstring issue. I would say one of their other top 5 players shattered his ankle. They have no wide receivers. And for this game to be close, it was really pretty embarrassing. And this is a game that I would say the last 3 years, coming off a bye, the 49ers getting healthy, I think they win by 20 plus points. I expected this to be like 35-15 or something like that.
Same. I thought it was my bet of the year.
And the kicker situation, I think it was very reflective. The kicker and then the long snapper getting in with Debo. It's like, hey guys, Debo's made huge plays in this game. Let's just keep our mouth shut and try to make a field goal. Like, you're not in the position to be over there yapping around. Like, you are losing this team games right now or putting them in position. Because if they would have lost today with Arizona, just absolutely mauling, they would have been in major trouble, right? They would have been 4-5. You have the Cardinals now at 6-4, who look like, I don't know, playing as well as top 5 team in the NFL in terms of the way they're playing today, right?
And the Rams are now healthy.
Are getting healthy, yeah. So it would have this was must win for the 49ers. They get Seattle next week, who they've owned, but they do not feel anywhere near the team that was a legit Super Bowl threat these last 3 years. They got issues, and it's not Kittle, and it's not Purdy's playing well. It's not Trent Williams. It's all these weird. Bosa's playing well. Fred's playing well, but for some reason they dominate teams. And you look up, you're like, it's 13-10. What the hell is going on?
Yeah, the numbers are incredible. Now for a segment called Making It Look Easy, brought to you by Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Today, Brock Purdy did it against the Bucs. 350 yards, a couple of touchdown passes, great final drive. He hit George Kittle in the back of the end zone, gave the Niners the lead, also led San Francisco down the field, 41 seconds to set up the game-winning field goal. Just like Brock made it look easy, Morgan & Morgan does the same to submit a claim. 100 offices nationwide, over that, more than 800 lawyers nationwide. They have been able to get their clients $15 billion. How about that? A proven track record of fighting to get you full and fair compensation. Morgan & Morgan been fighting for the people for over 35 years. So if you're ever injured, go to forthepeople.com/Colin or dial pound 529 to check out America's largest injury law firm. Winning in the NFL is hard. Hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. The Emirates NBA Cup is here. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's cool. Official sports betting partner of the NBA. All 30 teams split into 6 groups every Tuesday and Friday, playing for the right to advance in a single elimination in-season tourney. It was great last year, culminating in the NBA Cup championship in Vegas. First time? Here's something special. New DraftKings customers. Bet $5, You get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Score big. Use the code Colin. So you download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Please use the code Colin. New customers get $150 in bonus bets, betting just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Okay, Steelers beat Washington 28-27. So I went today and I said, and I watched Russell. So the Steelers are 3-0 with Russell Wilson, averaging about 30 a game. It's the first time in several years they have the offense moving. And I went back and I took Russell Wilson with Pete Carroll in Seattle, Russell Wilson the 1 year with Sean Payton, and Russell Wilson with Mike Tomlin, the 3 times he's had competent coaches. And you know what he gives you? He moves, 64% completion percentage, a passer rating over 100. He doesn't miss any starts. He's not great from the pocket, but he throws a really nice deep ball. And when I watch what he's done to Pittsburgh, he has brought, it's a little Big Ben. He's a totally different player. He's brought the deep ball back to the Steelers. So now you have veteran, just say it out loud, veteran coach, great defense, tough at home, solid run game, good deep ball offense. That's a pretty good football team. That's a pretty good team.
Yeah, to me, that stat that they showed that they were averaging 20 points with Fields and they were averaging over 30 points with him. I mean, that's a pretty big difference. I mean, that's a pretty and what did they get a game-winning touchdown on? The deep ball throw to Mike Williams.
Yeah.
What are their 3 best wide receivers now? Adding Mike Williams with Pickens and their tight end. Big guys, throw them up, give them 50-50 balls because they're not 50-50 balls with those guys right there. 75-25 balls with those guys.
Right.
So I thought at times today, like, this is where you got to be careful about writing your takes down at halftime. Like the gap, Jaden looked way better. Their offense was rolling. But Russell, there is something to be said. I think he can be kind of corny and kind of just stupid the way that he comes off like a politician at times. But he is very steady Eddie. You know, he doesn't go into the tank when it just looked off early. And with Fields, he also can make the throw, that lob touch throw that won them the game, that a handful of the average to below average quarterbacks can't make. It was a problem with Trubisky forever. You know, Fields is a more talented Trubisky, but cannot make that layered kind of lollipop throw. And at this point in time, that is Russell's go-to throw. And even back when he was better, when did his game, like when he got DK Metcalf? So you give him these big targets, Sutton, like they had some plays at Denver, right? Throw it up, let them go make a play. That was a big win for Pittsburgh, Colin. Because I thought I was thoroughly impressed with Washington. I'm like, this is going to be a great win. And then Russell drives them right down the field. Even his calmness, there is something to be said on that game-winning drive that he led them on. When those guys look at him in the huddle, like this ain't his first rodeo. Say what you want about him. He's not near the same guy. But like you look at him in the huddle, you go, this guy has been in this moment, 50-plus times in his career. On Sunday Night Football, on Monday Night Football, in the playoffs. So there's a calmness to him that you can't really dispute. I'm not the biggest fan, but the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, again, with Russell, Pittsburgh dominated time of possession. Because, again...
Well, their running game now is a lot better, it feels like, with him in the game.
And Washington had no run game. So, again, the early highlights from the young player with a great offensive coordinator, at half I wrote down, wow, Jaden makes Russell look small. And then all of a sudden you look at the last 3 or 4 drives, Pittsburgh establishes physicality. A lot of teams' defense plays well early. But those 300-pound guys, if the other team's running on you, and Pittsburgh was, those 300-pound guys, 7-play drive, 9-play drive, 10-play drive, those guys don't have the same pass rush. And all of a sudden in the second half, that pass rush that had really stymied Pittsburgh in the first half, now you're not getting the same juice. You're not getting the same energy. And in the end, I thought, it wasn't that Jaden was bad, but it was, you have 140.
I don't think his numbers reflected. I thought he was fantastic.
In the first half, I thought he was really good.
I thought, for a guy who throws these kind of frozen ropes, he hits his guys in stride and gives them the ability to keep on running. His touch down the sideline is fantastic.
How about end of the third quarter, Terry McLaurin? He also does something that Russell has found Pickens. That is his guy. At Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin. Like, it's really important. It didn't take Jalen and Russell long to figure out, you got to have a guy.
Well, and I'm sure we'll get to the Bears. One thing that can't be argued, and you see this in that game, for your star wide receivers to believe in your quarterback and like the guy, like George Pickens clearly is on board with this move. Why it benefits him.
Totally.
Terry McLaurin, who has, overachieved given who he's played with for the last couple of years, feels like he's, hit the lottery right now. And you can see it in his play, just how much he smiles. I saw it with the 49ers forever. They didn't believe in Trey Lance. Debo Samuel, they didn't think he was good enough.
Right.
So, and I think you're seeing it in Chicago. Some of these guys, starting with DJ Moore, are kind of turning on him, and it's very reflective. Like clearly, the Steelers. I don't know if this is true. You'd have to see their heart monitor. Feel like they're playing a little harder on offense for Russell Wilson. And in Washington, it's an incredible story. I know they lost today, but and they're playing the Eagles. They easily could lose again on Thursday. But man, what an impressive year by Dan Quinn in that operation, isn't it?
Yeah. So they've lost. Washington's lost to the Ravens and the Steelers, and the Bucs when the Bucs were healthy. So I kind of feel we're getting a little bit of a reality check. Washington's a little bit better story than they are a team.
Yeah.
Coming into this game, I felt they were both good stories. The Russell Wilson story, the Washington story. I think Pittsburgh's the better team. I mean, let's be honest about Pittsburgh too. They had that fake punt didn't work, and they fumbled at the one. Pittsburgh really did themselves no favors in this football game. So whereas Washington got, it took advantage of Pittsburgh's special teams blunder, and that's not to say it was a lucky win by Pittsburgh or to marginalize what Washington is. But I do feel like once you look at Washington against Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and the healthy Bucs, they're a great story. Yeah. They're a good football team. I think Pittsburgh going on the road today, my takeaway is if you just take out that fumble on the 1 yard line, it kind of felt like they controlled the clock. I mean, the dominating time of possession.
Well, to me, where it's huge is they play the Ravens this upcoming week. So you win that game instead of having the same record as them with 3 losses, you have a game advantage on them. And that little buffer, I mean, today, same thing with Washington, right? Clearly the Eagles were going to dominate this undermanned Cowboy team. Well, you go into this Thursday night. Oh, that's Thursday night football. Commanders at the Philadelphia. I mean, that's a pretty big game. But I think like what you're saying, I think most people, if we take a deep breath, go, the Eagles should win that game. The Eagles are going to be favored in that game, and they probably will win that game. And that's if Washington ends up 10-7 or 11-6, but with a lot of losses to these playoff teams, it's an incredible story.
Yeah, and also Washington played their starters to the last snap. Philadelphia's resting guys in the second
Kenny
half.
Pickett's in like start of the fourth quarter.
So I mean, literally, Philadelphia's got their starters are playing 42 snaps. Washington's played 65. So I think Philadelphia Thursday is the play. It's time to take a look at this weekend's tastiest matchup. Sunday night football brought to you by Uber Eats. It's funny, a lot of the games that were lopsided are actually great stories for us. So Arizona beat the Jets 31-6. And I'm looking at Aaron Rodgers now. And when you put him on the same field as Kyler Murray, and we've been saying this now for several weeks, Arizona's got dudes. Offensively, how about McBride today? That move running over Jets players. At one point, Kyler Murray had 17 straight completions. So I have 2 takes. Number one is Aaron's become a little like the Washington Wizards MJ. Called out a teammate, Kwame Brown, Mike Williams. Had a buddy as a coach, Hackett, Doug Collins. Had a buddy as a player, Lazard, Charles Oakley, under 500. And there were moments for MJ and Aaron, but he looks like an old man, and that Jets offense is an old man offense. So that's my first take. My second take is they blamed Robert Saleh. This defense has gotten progressively worse. Saleh was the best coach on the staff. They could have gone in. They weren't going to beat Buffalo. But this organization, it's almost like in politics. If you lose an election, you have to identify what went wrong. You can't point fingers. You got to go, here's what we did wrong. Democrats will figure this out eventually, but that's the job. When you're losing, you have to identify why we're losing. The Jets said, it's Saleh. No, bro, the defense now stinks, and it's got good personnel. So, I mean, to me, 31-6, I look at this. Aaron Rodgers in the first half threw for 40 yards. Now he got he got junk in the second half. But you know what it feels like a little bit? I do hold quarterbacks responsible for energy and body language. And because, it like in the NBA, you follow the lead, the work ethic of the best player. Some of this is just on Aaron. I see no energy. I don't love the body language. I see no juice. And I'm watching that Arizona team. Those guys, they like playing with Kyler. Whatever you say about the video game stuff, they like playing with him.
Well, I think at this point in time, there can't be that many players who are playing better than Kyler Murray right now. Since he returned from that injury, including last year, they are 9-9. Like that's a real football team.
Yeah.
And this team, I don't see how you watch them today and last week. They're dominating bad teams, like killing them. To me, they sure look like a playoff team to me. And the Jets look like what I thought all along, a team full of mercenaries, a team with zero connection to each other. Hassan Reddick, since the moment he came back, only because the owner ripped up his contract and did, as I think Schefter said, no one has ever got a rework contract who held out as long as him and basically got the fines thrown away that did not get a contract extension. It's unprecedented what happened. And that reflects everything that's going on. They show Woody Johnson that the organization's a mess. Starting from the owner, the quarterback, like he is always what he's been. And anyone in the league will tell you, listen, for a long time, people with the Packers kind of rolled their eyes, but he was arguably, beside Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, the most important player, one of them in the league. Yeah. And he was more physically gifted than those guys. Yeah. And his fundamentals weren't like those guys. So as he's aged, what happens? Today there was a play. I forget the D lineman. He was a rotational D lineman for him. I looked him up. He weighs almost 300 pounds. He ran Aaron Rodgers down. Rodgers ended up getting rid of the ball, but ran him down with ease. This is not a 240-pound linebacker running him down. This is a guy that weighs 300 pounds and got within a couple steps. And Rodgers used to be able to kind of do his version of like what Lamar does so well, kind of backward scramble, run away. Can't even dream of doing that anymore. And that team, the Cardinals defensive coordinator is 32 years old. He was born in 1993. What we witnessed today was a clinic put on by a guy born in 1993 against this 40-year-old future Hall of Famer, adding Devontae Adams, Garrett. I've been hearing about Breece Hall's the greatest thing since Barry Sanders or Walter Payton. Give me a break. The hype on this team far exceeded the realities. Even if things went well, what happened today? Tyron Smith, who's had a bad year, legendary player, over-the-hill player, got hurt today. He gets hurt a lot. So it's like they were so dependent on all these guys. They signed Mike Williams. Remember, everyone was so excited. They signed Mike Williams for it's not even Thanksgiving. He's on another team. Looks happy
and
as hell.
Performing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think this Jets situation was, I think you saw an organization that just has a direction, has a coaching staff that's real against a team that has an NBA mercenary feel to it. No one cares about. And like you said, the players aren't near what they once were. I mean, Devontae Adams, who, let's face it, is not near what he once was in the peak of his powers. Rodgers a shell of himself. The Reddicks. I mean, how about Sauce Gardner? You talked about Trey McBride. He looks like Kittle 2.0. He threw Sauce Gardner off him like he was me or you. He didn't even have to put his hand to go to the ground. He just kind of shoved him off. This is supposed to be $100 million corner. He's had a horrendous season. Well, what usually happens with younger players? Like younger people, most young people are followers. And when you have a lot of disconnect, coaches getting fired, a bunch of weird stuff, it's easy to kind of stray. And Breece Hall, Sauce Gardner, it just feels like they're all over the map. I don't even put it on them. I put it on the organization. You think Sauce Gardner would look like that if he was playing for Andy Reid? No chance. But that's what happens when you put talented players in dysfunctional places. They usually fall apart.
Yeah,
the Jets stink, Colin. I mean, they are bad. They got, we haven't talked since the Thursday night game. 2 of their touchdowns came with Garrett Wilson. He didn't use his left arm. I mean, that's pretty big outlier, right? I mean, that they easily could have lost that game if it wasn't for one of the greatest catches we've ever seen.
Yeah, I think, and the question becomes, does Aaron come back? It's when Brett Favre went to the Jets, he had a lot left in the tank. He went on to Minnesota after that and had a couple of huge years. Aaron's done. There's just nothing there. And he never, he never had the gamesmanship or sort of the foxhole quality of Brett Favre anyway. When you get to be an older radio host, an older quarterback, or an older CEO, you'll have diminishing skills. You'll have less energy. What you want to do is be able to kind of galvanize the group, rally people around you, because you can't put in 80 hours a week. You can put in 65, but you have to rely on people. I've always said Aaron's not a galvanizer. He's not a foxhole guy. He's a bit more of a bailer than a baller. He's a guy that that's why it was so few career come from behind wins. If you go back to 2022, Kirk Cousins has, I think, 15. Aaron has 6. And they're both old guys coming off of surgery. Both have had 2 teams. Cousins isn't cool, so you don't think he's a great come from behind quarterback. He's outstanding. Yeah. Aaron's not. He's living, he's the band now touring, and he's doing old songs. There's nothing new, and I don't think there's a ton of energy. That was this week's Sunday Night Football, brought to you by Uber Eats as the official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Uber Eats has the best game day deals all season long. Order now for game day. I want to talk about another game. Let's go back to an interesting game. Kansas City beats Denver 16-14. And I wrote, what Kansas City's become is a great moments team. 2 for 2 on 4th down, blocked a kick, great on 3rd down, only 3 penalties. They're still trying to figure out what the hell they are a little bit offensively. Like they don't,
they're this, Colin. It's just ugly. Just keep us in the game and we'll just try to win it with 5 minutes left.
But when you have the best coach, the best quarterback, arguably the best defense, the best 3rd down offense, that's enough. I was thinking about this about 2 weeks ago. About every 6 years, I went back and looked. It was about every 6 to 7 years, a great team wins the Super Bowl. But mostly it's a really good team with no huge hole that coaches can pick on. In a 2-week layoff for the Super Bowl, when Mahomes didn't have both tackles, he gets routed. If he'd had one, it would have been a game. Kansas City's not terrible at anything. They're beat up. They're trying to figure out their receiving core. But because Mahomes is so good and Andy Reid is so clever, it's functional. It makes plays when you have to. I thought this was the game. This was the game I did not pick in Blazing 5. It was my last pick. I thought Denver had a chance to win today.
Same.
But the takeaway I had beyond Kansas City doing that, Bo Nix, that final drive, 13 plays, a little bit like Brock Purdy. You're like, he had 8 different receivers today, 22 with 30, 245 yards, a couple of touchdowns, great final drive. I think all those college starts, I think he may have a lower ceiling, but I think Denver is 5 drafted players away and maybe a free agent signing from being a pain in the ass to people. I think Denver's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I thought this game was way more about Denver than Kansas City. Kansas City just does this every week. They're going to go 15-2 or 16-1, and everyone's going to go how the hell they do it. Well, they do it because, like you said, it's the organizational competitive character, their know-how, their experience. They're missing their best receiver who tore his ACL. They're starting running back. Like Kareem Hunt's been an awesome story. There's a big drop-off between Pacheco and him.
Huge.
So, you get him back hopefully in December. It's a broken leg. So, that'll be a big boost for them because they're going to win like this, right? 21-17, 20. But to me, Denver went in there as they should have. Short week, Kansas City a little gas, and they came in ready to win. And Bo Nix hit Sutton on the beautiful touchdown pass. You're like, it's going to be the game. I thought it's finally the Chiefs just lose 28-15 or something.
Yep.
And they just find a way because defensively they're good. Obviously, the home crowd is pretty special. But I think Denver, this was probably one of their more impressive weeks of the year, even counting their wins, just because, we'll have to see how it breaks out. That's 7 seed when you look, obviously the Jets are done. Colts are in major trouble. When you look at the AFC playoff, the Bengals are screwed. You basically have the Steelers and Ravens. One team's going to win the division, one team's going to be in.
Well, Steelers,
the Chiefs and the Chargers
Denver,
are in.
Yeah, Steelers.
I think Denver could get the 7 seed, Colin.
So do I. I think the top is very good. Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City. And then I think the wild card feels like.
Do you throw Pittsburgh in there too, though, with Baltimore?
I do. I think, let's say Pittsburgh.
We'll find out when they play each other this week.
Yeah, and Baltimore at their best is better than Pittsburgh at their best.
Agreed.
So I think the wild card teams, and they don't feel quite as good. Chargers, not a ton of juice offensively, but a good team. Denver, rookie quarterback, and Pittsburgh, some limitations, I think, on, I think Russell from the pocket, there's limitations if he was trailing in a game and you put big heat on him. But I will say with Denver, I mean, Mahomes last 2 games, no picks, first 7 games, 9 picks. So what Kansas City has basically done, they've gotten those ugly, remember the start of the year, we're like, Jesus, Mahomes has like 1 or 2 just horrible picks. They've gotten out of that space. The win for Kansas City is harder than you think because of the short week. But I think, to your point, I think you looked at Sean Payton and Bo Nix, and I think we could both say he found his Drew Brees. He found his guy. I don't know if he's as good as him, but he found his guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's definitely made strides because it was early. I think I didn't put as much stock into some of the early games in the fourth quarter when he played well, because it's like the context of that, the defense gave up. But I do think the last couple weeks you feel a lot better about it. And let's face it, like there are some rookie quarterbacks playing, and obviously Jaden Daniels, it couldn't have gone much better. It's one of the great, we saw one of the greatest rookie seasons of all time last year with CJ Stroud. I would put Jaden Daniels right there toe to toe of geez, it can't be this good, can it? And then you have Drake May, who's on a team that's so shitty. But you're watching me go, well, there's something there.
Oh, yeah.
I would take that guy. And then you watch Bo, who doesn't have Drake's physical characteristics, who's not as talented. Why one guy goes 3, the other guy, most people thought was overdrafted, but you go with this coach, with this infrastructure, their defense. I mean, that's the one thing. If Sean Payton has a defense, as he did in New Orleans with Drew Brees, they were elite, right? So if you just give a defense, he'll figure out the offense. Most teams are not Kansas City. To me, I think they get to 9 wins and they would be the 7th seed. Now, the difference, though, is, depending on who they play, right? If you're the 7th seed, you're playing the 2 seed. So you're playing Baltimore or Buffalo. No one's betting on Denver. I would say no one's going to want to see the Chargers as the 6th seed. If you're Baltimore, Pittsburgh, that will be a team that, they're a 5-point underdog. I think Harbaugh would be a team that people would believe in. Where Denver, there's nothing wrong with it. One and done team in the playoffs, probably like the Commanders. And you tip your hat to it. You feel good.
Yeah. If you look at their schedule, John, Denver now hosts the Falcons, dome team, cold weather. Then they face the Raiders. Then they face the Browns at home. Then they get the Colts at home. And then they go to the Chargers. I think they match up. It's very close. So to your point here is, preseason, we're like, oh, you look at some of these teams. Then the Broncos end with the Bengals. And by the way, they host the Chiefs in the last week 18. Kansas City could be resting guys at that point. They could be just
I'm looking at it right now. Technically, at 5-5, they are in the 7th spot, trailed by Indianapolis, who, let's face it, I don't blame them. I think they did the right thing, but the Flacco, Anthony Richardson thing's all out of whack now. Flacco looks terrible. And the Bengals, who have this quarterback who's can't play any better, and Jamar Chase, who looks like Jerry Rice in his prime, cannot win games. So, you don't feel very, and just because of the division they're in, it's just a lot harder when you got to play Pittsburgh and Baltimore, right? Then they don't get the Raiders. Even Cleveland now, throwing in Jameis as a real team with real players. Yeah. I would much rather play the Raiders than the Browns. So that was a pretty devastating loss for the Bengals the other night. And that could be the difference why Denver gets the 7th seed and the Bengals end up 8-9. I mean, it could just be the difference. One team's 9-8, the other team's 8-9. So it's that big of a difference.
Yeah, and I think Denver's schedule right now looks very formidable. Okay, let's talk a game that wasn't nearly as captivating, but it made a statement. New England 19, Chicago 3, 21 straight drives for the Bears without a touchdown. 3rd straight game, no offensive identity. Caleb under 54% completion rate, 3rd straight game. He's lost. 1 for 14 on 3rd down, pitiful. And Drake May, again, 7 different targets. They didn't ask him to do much. They averaged 5.5 yards a play without, much to work with. But I think the story here is, and I've said this, poorly coached teams, Brandon Staley last year, start the year. Remember that, Brandon? I think it was last year. They almost beat Miami to start a wild, crazy game. And then about week 6, you're like, man, they're not well coached. And then by week 12, the players have quit. A poorly run business can fool people 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, that Tennessee win, they were outplayed by the Titans at home in week 1. It was a Will Levis mistake, but that's an L. I think what you look at this team now is you look at a poorly coached team. There's a lack of belief. There's absolutely no identity offensively. They average 2.4 yards a play. Ryan Poles said last week, we're not making coaching changes. This is not Jacksonville. Chicago is a loud media. Do you fire Matt Eberflus during the season?
I mean, I think there's a decent chance by the time, we wake up or before lunch on Monday, he's relieved of his duties. You can't go back-to-back games like they have just had when they were a play away from looking like, is this team about to win 10 or 11 games? And it now feels like if I told you they win one more game the rest of the season, we've talked about their schedule, they're in shambles. Their coaching staff's an embarrassment right now, and it's going to get absolutely destroyed by every Bears fan, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
But I also think that, like, Ryan Poles bears responsibility. He drafted Rome Odunze, who we all like. Their offensive line is pitiful, and there were countless offensive linemen on the board at pick 9 that would have – who's Jim Harbaugh take? He takes an offensive lineman where it's like, take a receiver. He's like, no. Who would Andy Reid have taken in that spot? He would have taken a guard or a tackle because you have to protect that guy. And they took a wide receiver when they already got multiple wide receivers. And let's face it, they got a problem on their hands because DJ Moore, who for like a 5 straight year stretch, everyone in the NFL is like, listen, I don't know. This guy, it doesn't matter what quarterback he's playing with. This guy's a stud. People liked him. He's high character. He does not like Caleb. They have an issue. They have an issue, and they just extended him. Now, obviously, it's not like if you have to pick one or the other, they have no choice. They're all in on Caleb Williams, but that is a problem for them. And I saw this with the 49ers, and I'm not comparing Caleb to Trey Lance. He's obviously a much better player, but they never believed in Trey Lance. Not the coaching staff, not the front office, the players. Why they wanted Jimmy, why they had no problem going to Purdy, because they see every day in practice. I think we were talking before you jumped on about I think Nick Wright had a take about just go with Trey Lance right now because maybe you get something and best case he just sucks and you lose. You know why you can't do that? Because Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb would be like, what the fuck are we doing? Because they see practice. And I think you have this Caleb Williams situation. Everyone's going to point at Shane Waldron, who I always kind of liked, but clearly this is not going well for him. And Eberflus oversaid is going to get fired. But there are plays to be made for Caleb, and he doesn't look remotely close. Even if you are a Caleb supporter, which with you, like most people, I would have drafted him number 1 overall. But the draft happened. Now we're 10 games in. There are plays. It's not all his fault, but I think we also have to acknowledge Drake May plays in an organization that's in turmoil. The former head coach, who's one of the most legendary sports figures of all times, ripping Gerard Mayo 3 weeks ago. Everyone's ripping the owner. The coaching staff's more than questionable. There's not that much talent. You watch Drake May, you're like, God, he was the best quarterback by a wide margin on the field.
No question.
And the other thing, Colin, is let's use Jared Goff as an example. Remember that rookie season? It felt like, is this guy even an NFL player? But the one thing you knew Jared Goff could do in college was he was a pocket quarterback. So he was never going to have to run. He's a pocket. If you could protect him, he could play in the pocket. There is just a question with Caleb, can he play within the pocket? That was a question coming out. It's not something he's comfortable doing. You don't just get to freelance all the time in the NFL. So it's 1, 2, 3, get rid of the ball. Now, are his receivers not getting open all the time? Obviously some plays, but I do think there's a legit question of what offense to make this guy successful. I watched Drake May. It's I think that guy could fit in a lot of offenses. Yeah. I thought Jaden was I think he's going to have to play in more of a Lamar style. I'm watching what Lamar is now, what Lamar was when he was really young, not the version now. And you watch Jaden right now, it's this guy's awesome in the pocket. So I just think there's question marks on Caleb that you look at this job, this is why I'm Mike Vrabel. I'm not looking for Caleb to throw 40 touchdowns anymore. Maybe that's not his game. Let's just kind of go what Pete Carroll did in 13 and 14. Hey, we're going to run the ball. We're going to have a tough defense. You're going to play within my system. We're taking the cooking utensils away from your hands.
That's what Philadelphia has done with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts today is throwing 24 times, and it's very effective. He throws a good deep ball. They're not letting Jalen Hurts. And by the way, outside of a Mahomes or a Josh Allen, I don't want my guys throwing 42 times. I don't want my offensive lineman backing up 42. I want him going forward 42 times. It's interesting because
Jalen's a little less herky-jerky, though. Caleb, I think, is a little shorter area. I think Jalen's a better runner, but little more quick twitch. And to me, his herky-jerkiness throws everything off. And part of it's young. He's kind of seeing ghosts. But it's just, I don't know if we've seen something this go back to like Sam Darnold Jets. This is a train wreck, Colin, offensively.
Yeah. Well, when he was coming out, I talked to every scout I could, and they all had the same concern. There were two concerns. Number one was accuracy. People said, I think we could clean it up, but he gets really erratic. Every game with USC, they're like, he gets real streaky, and then he just has, a Notre Dame game where it's just nothing works, like for an entire half. The second thing they said is, and guys said, didn't love the fingernails, didn't love jumping into the crowd with mom, really emotional. Doesn't mean he's a bad kid, but he's really emotional. And really emotional players tend to be high and low, especially when they're young. So you're going to have to deal with a very emotional kid with some accuracy issues. And it kind of goes back to my say it out loud. Those aren't great. Highly emotional player, accuracy issues. Bo Nix is very stoic. Accuracy is not an issue. It just sounds better. So
it's Russell's defining characteristic, how just kind of, just fake optimistic it feels like but it works.
It works for him. And I think with Caleb, he can be a bit moody. I remember the game at USC. I think it was year one with they went to Corvallis. He had a terrible first half. He got really moody on the sidelines. I think they came back to win that game, but it was the first time I thought, yeah, dude, you're on TV. This is a big TV game. Come on, get it together. And I think
I feel like
real.
He goes in the shell more now. He just sits by himself on the bench. Guys, we got to work together and figure some stuff out. You can't isolate in this position.
Yeah, and I think that was a Jay Cutler issue, by the way, in Chicago. Cutler was a guy that would just go by himself, hang in the
isolation,
corner,
yeah.
And it's not what you want. Okay, Philadelphia 34, Dallas 6. Terribly ineffective first half. 4 total turnovers in the first half. I think we were just waiting for Philadelphia to take over in the third, and they did. In the third quarter, the Eagles had 116 yards. The Cowboys had 3. And again, they didn't ask Jalen Hurts to do much. I'm looking at it right here. 14 for 20, 202 yards, a couple of touchdowns. Trey Lance came in third quarter. This was a really predictable blowout. I watched Carolina and the Giants to start the day. I believe what I'm going to say is true, that Dallas is the worst team in the NFL right now. I really believe that. I think they're the worst team in the NFL. Because at least the Giants have Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll. They could engineer a good drive. I think the Cowboys have 2 excellent players, Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb. And I think Zach Martin was great. Now he's a good player.
Yeah.
I'll go back to something I said before the season. If I can identify this, how could the Cowboys not? It is the worst running back room in the league. It is maybe the thinnest wide receiver room in the league. The offensive line is in a rebuild. Dak is hurt again. And their defensive players, a couple of them I like, tend to be, it feels to me, a little overhyped and a tad injury prone. I could spend a lot of time on Dallas. But on the other side, I looked at Philadelphia and I thought, I'm not a Sirianni fan, but they are playing formula football with that offense. And that formula with those players feels like it's working to me.
Well, it's why I picked him at the beginning of the year to win the division, just because the talent on the roster is just immense. And the quarterback does not need to be what Joe Burrow's doing right now. Adding Saquon Barkley, who I would say him and Derrick Henry have been 2 of the great cheap acquisitions in the history of the NFL. But one thing that they look a lot better on, and this is why you pay a guy $5 million, there was a scheme, I don't want to say disagreement, but it was just different from the players they had to what Vic usually likes. So there is going to be some time that it takes to get things figured out. Well, what's happening over the last month? Jalen Carter, the premium player in which they draft, has played a lot better. I'm watching today, Nakobe Dean making plays all over the place.
Yes.
Nolan Smith has come on. They have just, some of these young players have just slowly made more plays as the season goes on. Why? Vic Fangio knows what he's doing. Now, he's an intense, a lot different than what they had last year with the Patricia Desai situation. But listen, obviously they're playing the Cowboys today, but I would just say over the last month, they have looked like a much more capable defense. Early on in the season, it was like, this is not possible. That's my question mark with Baltimore. You can't play that bad a defense and win a Super Bowl. It's not possible.
Can't do it.
And especially in the conference in there and playing Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and probably Justin Herbert as well. But you watch the Eagles, if their defense is just solid, when healthy, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Saquon Barkley with Jalen, passing and running ability, it just doesn't get any better in the NFL.
It's just Philadelphia. I watched them today as I was kind of disappointed in San Francisco. I think Philadelphia has the best roster in the league.
I think offensively, definitely. I think offensively, definitely. I think defensively, they have players.
They're young. Some of their best players are young.
Yeah, I think offensively, when Jalen's playing like he has the last month, you can't even compare. And when the left tackle's healthy, their offensive line is excellent. They have a top, I don't know, 2 or 3 running back. They have a quarterback who's played like a top 6, 7 guy all season long. They have a high-end tight end. They have elite 2 wide receivers. So, and listen, I know Kellen Moore takes a lot of shit. I've followed his career since he was a player. I think he's a pretty bright guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was pretty good for the Cowboys. We can nitpick him all we want. I do think when you watch Dallas, NBA coaches talk about this a lot. Like when you play a team and their star player goes down, like the day before you play them, your team just like, oh, Giannis is out and you don't take him serious. All of a sudden you lose. Like I thought that first half was the Eagles. Like how could they take the Cowboys as seriously once Dak rips his hamstring off the bone? And they felt like they were sleepwalking through the game for about the first 25 minutes. And then they realized, okay, this is JV versus varsity. They flipped a switch. And basically 15 minutes, they scored what felt like 30 points, and it was over in a heartbeat. I also think Dallas, we talked about this last week with Zeke. They had to leave him at home because he was being late. And, for an older player who's supposed to be like a high-level leader, and then today he's playing and he fumbles into the end zone. Like, in what world, and this is, obviously Jerry doesn't want to cut him. You can't tell me Mike McCarthy, if he's willing to leave a veteran player who's clearly not on board, then would play him the next week. Why don't you just cut a player like that? Like, what's the point? And then look today, he fumbles, it leads to a score. I just think the Cowboys are all out of whack from the hierarchy. And we talk about this all the time, the parallels with the, that late post-Gruden Al Davis, where you have this owner who's also in charge of the personnel, who's just in charge of the money. And it just, like the Eagles, if a guy's on the field, who's in charge? Howie, the GM, who works hand in hand with the coach. Right? With the Niners, it's Kyle and John. Was like, yeah, why is Zeke playing? Oh, Jerry likes him. Goes like, what are we doing? Jerry's 82 years old. It just, this season clearly was going to get away from him, and now they're better off, Colin, because they're going to have a new coach. The Chargers won 5 games last year, which led to McConkey and Alt. So aren't you better off? You're the Cowboys just losing all these games. Like there's nothing wrong to end up with the 4th pick, and then you could just revamp your roster.
I think, listen, there's 2 games left. They have a chance to be favored. Carolina looked pretty good today. That rookie receiver, Chuba Hubbard.
I think I'd take Carolina in that game if they played next week.
Yep. I think Bryce Young, at the end of last year, Bryce was okay in the last 4 games. Bryce looked comfortable today. I think we both like that coach, Canales, they brought in, like a smart guy. I think Carolina can move the ball. I think that wide receiver they picked early is a hit. He's a really
South Carolina guy. He's like a Debo. He can play.
And now New York, they probably win, but that schedule it's L's. And my take is where you want to get. So your Giants will probably have the number 1 pick. New England could reel off 3 more wins. They're not going to be number 1
easily.
And they don't need a quarterback. And I think Gerard Mayo, now forget Brissett. Drake's their guy, Drake May. This locker room is young. They're going to fight their ass off to win games. Giants.
I would buy some stock. Now we'll see if the coaching staff. Drake May is a pretty interesting player, Colin. Yep. He's hard to watch and go, there's something there. A lot of coaches would want to work with that.
Yeah, his comp was Justin Herbert. He was an unpolished Justin Herbert. You can completely see it. You can absolutely see the movement, the size, the arm. His feet aren't quite as good. I mean, Herbert looks like the league logo. He's got that perfect wide stance.
How good does he look right now? Oh my God.
Oh, Jesus God. But my takeaway here with Dallas is if Carolina plays well, and they'll have something to play for here. I think they want to keep Bryce Young and keep him healthy. I think the Cowboys could have the 2nd to 3rd pick in this draft. Again, if Chicago was worse, they got a quarterback. If New England was, have a quarterback. You start getting into that 3 or 4 spot. Right now, they're a 3-win team. Let's say they finish with 4, John. Somebody's going to move up for Cam Ward. Somebody's moving up for him. And I think Dallas could get a couple seconds, a couple thirds. That's how you read. That's what do a Houston.
What I think makes it really hard for Dallas? Obviously, Mike McCarthy was in the last year of his deal, had to have success to keep his job. He's going to get fired. But if you look at the resumes when they fired Jason Garrett and hired
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy was just a way better coach than Jason Garrett. Like, what are the
Yes.
chances that they are going to upgrade firing Mike McCarthy? Like, is Belichick lined up to work with his 82-year-old GM owner? Probably not, even though their relationship and their roster has a lot of questions. Like, honestly, the only thing they're going to have going for them, because they never have cap space, is going to be their high draft picks in every round. But in terms of coaches lined up, like, is this something Belichick and Vrabel are interested in doing? Now you have to look
I
around. Like, Jacksonville is kind of a weird place.
no.
The Bears aren't as desirable if you question Caleb's ability. So listen, you could just, it's the NFL, it's the Cowboys, but I wonder if a lot of people are going to be a little reluctant. And it's like, is Jerry just going to give Vrabel or Belichick 15, $18 million? Like, give Spanos credit. He finally said, okay, need Jim
Okay.
Harbaugh. And
Okay.
it
So
worked.
let's look at the jobs that could be open. Okay. Jets is not a premier job, impulsive owner, 40-year-old prickly quarterback. I don't think Dallas is an elite job. You're tied to Dak Prescott. It's a very weak roster in a quickly improving NFC. Let's think of the other jobs. A Chicago,
Jacksonville.
Jacksonville, Chicago. Trevor Lawrence. How many times does he want to go in rehab? I'm not. I mean, today it was Vikings 12, Jags 7. Sam Darnold, they were 0 for 5 in the red zone. That game could have been 30-7. Mac Jones can't play. 2 picks, 100 yards. He can't play. So, I mean, that Jacksonville has quit. There's just nothing there. Their defense is pretty interesting, but they got nothing offensively. JJ
I think
McCarthy.
Trevor Lawrence getting injured, and I think I saw Jay Gruden said, and he had worked there. He's like, I'd heard the guy needs surgery. That could easily come out in the next couple of days that he goes under the knife. I think they would have been better off. It's like, you know what? Trevor Lawrence is just shitty. And these coaches are arrogant. Like, I can fix this. Now it's like, well, he's crappy and he's missing a ton of time with major injuries. And they just paid him Dak Prescott money. I'm out. Like,
Yeah.
I can't do
So
that because you
what
can't get
is
rid of the guy.
what is the best job?
None of them. They're all terrible. It's why these jobs are open. It's why the best teams never have job open. I would say Seattle was a pretty unique job opening.
Yeah.
Pretty level-headed organization with talent, a good GM, Mike McDonald. Like, that's a pretty rare job. Like, when you just look at jobs consistently, it's like the Packers 5 years ago. Like, that's not normal.
That's the best job. The Packers 5 years ago, Matt LaFleur was the best job. Justin Herbert, Chargers. Some can push back on the Spanos family. That was the second best job. So you about every 4 years, you get one great job opening. That's about it.
And I think it turned out, and it's always easy to play Monday morning quarterback when we have information. Like, you would have loved to invest, all your money in Amazon 15 years ago if we would have known, but people don't know. But I would say Washington, Ben Johnson has to lose some sleep occasionally, knowing that he turned down a quarterback that, like, everyone with a straight face can go, this guy could be one of the best 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league during his, the next 10 years, right? He has that ability. You don't turn down a job like that. And it's like, Dan Snyder's no longer there. So you get an owner. Now, his basketball team's weird, but that's because of Maury's into that stuff. It's like, he's just a high level owner, pays money, will pay for people. Like, clearly, like, that's a really, really good job. And that was only because the guy sold his team and gave Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. Like, I think Dan Quinn got pretty lucky looking back that Ben Johnson hung up on those guys when they were flying to him, because that's a game changer.
Thursday Night Football is on. It's only on Prime Video. Best season yet, packed with big rivalries and even bigger stars. Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, Kaylee Hartung every week. Games you can't miss. Coverage begins at 7 Eastern with football's best party. TNF tonight, Thursday Night Football tonight. If you're not a Prime member, no problem. Sign up. 30-day free trial. Cancel anytime. Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details. But you know what? And this goes back to, God, every industry in the world. But when Washington got rid of everybody, I predicted Washington would make the playoffs because I liked Adam Peters' history. I like Dan Quinn. I like Cliff Kingsbury. I like Jaden Daniels. My take is, if everybody's new, it's okay. If everybody they replaced was awful, and they were.
Yeah.
And, for Washington to turn it around quickly, and for Houston last year to turn it around quickly, I think it highlights, John, something about the NFL that I think fans don't think about like we do, because we do this for a living. But we look at the NFL and we think, okay, there's like 5 great quarterbacks and 5 pretty good ones. That's the same with owners, GMs, and coaches.
Yeah.
Everything in the league across the board. Washington right now has a top 3 offensive coordinator. They may have one of the top GMs. They have one of the better owners. Dan Quinn's look at Dallas's defensive numbers without it. Dan's one of the 5 best defensive coaches. Jaden Daniels, we could be looking at the best rookie quarterback in a decade. The reason Washington feels even different than Houston is, because I think the owner in Washington's better than the owner of the McNairs in Houston, is if you know what you're doing in the NFL and you can align, I've always had this rule. If you're an A, even an A- at 4 things, owner, GM, coach, quarterback, your Super Bowl, Baltimore will be in the Super Bowl conversation every year. Harbaugh, Lamar, Steve Buscemi, and their front office. It's just, they're all really good. Kansas City, great. The truth is, Washington right now, they hit on everything. Coach, coordinator, GM. It's not a fluke. They're not ready yet, but and it also highlights, God, John, half of this league doesn't know what they're doing.
I think you're low. I think it's closer to 20. And it really crystallized when I went to the combine. And I'm lucky enough to, know Andy and Howie, and you just see these organizations like, it's football, shit's going to go wrong. You never know, adversity's going to hit, whether a guy gets in trouble, whether a coach underachieves. But like the Ravens, the Steelers, the Eagles, the Andy and the Chiefs, like the same teams. Kyle's, this is the worst season of all time for Kyle Shanahan. He's going to end up at minimum 10-7, So it's like McVay, shit hits the fans. Like, he's going to be in the playoffs again.
Look at this. Harbaugh comes in to a tire fire. Their defense is mostly the same. Their offense arguably is worse because Mike Williams and Keenan are gone. He's relying on a right tackle and a slot receiver that are rookies. The defense has gone from the worst in the league to top 5 on coaching. Jesse Minter, and Harbaugh. Like, that tells you there are at any one time, there are 5 coaches in this league who are coordinators. They have no, Jets have one right now. Chargers had one last year. They're just not head coaches.
Well, it's November 10th, Colin, and the Chargers have more wins than they did in 2023. It's November 10th. I mean, we're still several weeks away from Thanksgiving, and they're going to more than double their win total from last year. I also think, like, look at Rodgers and Devontae, who were in first class relative to the NFL. It's like they were in first class and they were complaining the blanket wasn't quite soft enough. Right. And then they went to the Raiders, they went to the Jets, and then Devontae, for some reason, demands he goes to the Jets. It's like, do you guys know how good you had it? Do you guys know how good you had it in Green Bay? No matter who you are. And I've said this forever, like, about what I do for a living, because people always ask, like, you have the dream. Eventually a job becomes work, right? Yeah. Like, no matter what you do, whether you're a football player, whether you talk about football, whether you're an architect, but like, when you like it, you do have to, like, sometimes be able to take a step back and realize, like, some spots and some relationships and some partnerships, like, I don't want to screw this up. I have it pretty well. And even Belichick and Brady for a long time butted heads. But I think for it took till Tom was 42 to draw a line in the sand, which, again, 20 plus years. Those guys both started making a stink through. Like, what are we talking about, guys? Like, if they would have stayed, it wouldn't have been as good, but it would not, their careers wouldn't have gone what they've experienced. Yeah. And now Rodgers' career is just going to end with him playing for the Jets. Like, that's forever. The Packers make fun of the Bears, and they currently do. Why? Because we're well run. They're not. They have more money. They're in a way bigger market. Yet we're one of the premier organizations for 30 years when it comes to television ratings and making all this league a bunch of money. It's us, not them, because we have cohesion with our GM and our head coach. And, Baltimore, the Chiefs, I think, listen, we can nitpick Sean McDermott, some of his late game decisions but he's pretty well established. Like, he's a good coach, right?
Yes.
And him and the GM working cohesion with their quarterback, they are a high level operation in Buffalo now. And they have been for 4 or 5 years.
Listen,
think they're running circles around their division.
Look at Sean Payton. They're in cap hell this year and next year. They don't have their full ammo of picks because of Russell. I mean, Sean is coaching with a rookie quarterback. They have one elite receiver.
When's the last time they had a first-round pick beside Bo Nix? It's been several years, right? Because they traded him away.
That is a story of coaching. I mean, Denver now is a viable team. It is just coaching. And Harbaugh, they have better players and they have more well-rounded roster than the Denver Broncos do. But for Harbaugh to walk in and Payton to walk in, if you look at what Sean Payton is dealing with now, go look at what they're still paying Russell this year and next. They don't have a full arsenal of picks. It's a rookie quarterback. There is a freaking gap, the Grand Canyon wide, in coaching, coordinating, and it just happens the Jets have a D owner, probably a D head coach right now, a C play caller, and a quarterback, frankly, who's a C that nobody wants to acknowledge.
Well, if you put Jim Harbaugh on the Bears right now with Caleb Williams, assuming that's who he would have wanted, because I don't think there's any guarantee that's who he would have wanted. Maybe he would have liked Drake May. I wouldn't put it past him. Who knows? But let's just say he got Caleb Williams in this roster. There's no doubt in my mind there's a wild card team. No doubt in my mind. Right. And they had the opportunity. He played for them. But of course, like, the Bears are too cheap. They won't do that. And I was always really critical of the Spanoses because it's like, guys, the paying a coach $4 or $5 million in this modern day, when you clearly have the money, this isn't 25 years ago when some teams had a lot more. Every team's getting $300-400 million. You have to, when you get the opportunity, and this guy's, you have to cut the check. And they finally did. And they're paying Minter's probably one of the highest paid defensive coordinators. Obviously, Jim makes $15+ million. That equals success. Like, one of the reasons for 20 years, basically since Marty, it's like, they always left a little something. It was never their roster. I mean, the Chargers went from Drew Brees to Phillip Rivers to Justin Herbert. That's not exactly Favre to Rodgers to Love, but it's not far off. And it's like, they just no success really beside a couple playoff wins. And now it feels like this team's going to be a Super Bowl contender for the next 4 or 5 years, right? As long as they can keep that quarterback healthy, they'll improve their roster. Maybe they get a playoff victory this year, like some big upset in the first round. Watch out for the Chargers because they're coming. And some of these teams, like, do you have any faith that the Bears will get the coaching hire right? No, they never do.
Oh, I mean, let's circle back to that. What is the best job available in the NFL right now? In fact, I'll grab my phone. I'll do this to the audience. I want to look at the standings right now. So I'm going to say,
well, do you think the Giants coming open or probably not?
No, because it's one.
Not that that would be a good job, but
I'm thinking right now. So Jets will have an opening, not a good gig.
Saints have an opening.
Raiders won't.
I hear a lot of people. I don't. I'm with you. I don't think they will, but I think a lot of people in the NFL thinks Antonio Pierce has a good chance to be. They just fired 4 coaches the other day. Clean house, year one.
So I would argue the best job. God, it can't be the Jaguars. There is no good job opening in the AFC. So let's go to the NFC. I think the Giants will keep Daboll. So Dallas, just because you have a capable quarterback and a couple of stars, isn't bad. Okay. Bears, I don't like that as a job. Saints, I'm not interested. Yeah, I'll make the argument. Hell, Tampa would be the best job if available, because I get Baker. The Glazer family's pretty classy. I know them. Jason Light's an excellent general manager.
Is Belichick a sleeper there now? You think?
I'll be honest.
Him and Jason work together in New England.
Yeah, and I don't think Todd Bowles is the issue. I think injuries are the issue.
Same.
To me, Tampa's the best job opening if it comes open. I think Todd will probably retain it. Glazers don't want to fire people; they're good people.
And I think Todd's done enough. Like, you watch them; they are a well-coached team,
and they play hard.
I do wonder if some of these owners, like, hey, we get Bill Belichick. Like, they're the type of ownership. Once upon a time, they traded for who? John Gruden, right? They hired Bruce Arians, signed Tom Brady. Like, they're a sneaky, like a little splash. Listen, most of these, I would say the one gig that if you do believe in Caleb, that he can just be the Pete Carroll early version of Russell. They have a defense, they have pieces on offense, and because their record's going to be crappy, they're going to have high draft picks. And like, I think that's a pretty intriguing job. The thing is, they don't want to pay anybody. I mean, these coaches, Kirby Smart and Lane Kiffin, are playing each other. They make combined like $25 million. That's the SEC. You're the Chicago Bears. So if you, why wouldn't you call Belichick? Hey, we'll give you 3 years, $60 million. These are line items to people. I mean, honestly, to what these teams are making now, that means nothing. Mark Davis, who historically the Raiders were the poorest NFL team, right? They just didn't have the cash flow. They have no problem paying guys to go away now. Why? He has unlimited money, which is scary for some of these owners who don't know what they're doing because they can just fire people nonstop. But the cash, whatever you want to offer Bill Belichick for all these teams, you can offer them. You can just give him 2 years, $50 million. Just come in and get us going in the right direction. But he's like, oh, could we find this coordinator maybe for $6 million? Like, what do you, don't complain when you lose. Don't complain when you lose. So I feel bad for Bears fans because I would have, this season has been a train wreck. It really has, given the expectations, and now feels, talk about a team that, we talk about the Cowboys not winning many more games. Look at the Bears schedule. I mean, they might only have one win, especially if their players start quitting.
When I'm watching football and wearing something comfortable, my favorite t-shirts are from True Classic. So I got about 6 of those in the mail. They're snug in the arms and the chest, just the right amount of room in the midsection. So for fall, they have long sleeve Henleys, waffle hoodies, jeans, button-ups, joggers, more. And if you're working out, and I try to work out 4 or 5 times a week, they have active wear, mix and match clothing, affordable prices. I love it. Fall is here. Step up your game right now. You can unlock big savings. They have what they call bundle packs. Just go to my exclusive link. Go to trueclassic.com. I'm wearing their stuff. trueclassic.com/Colin to save. trueclassic.com. Shop now. Elevate your wardrobe today. I want to end it with a college football topic. So, during the season, nobody's going to cry for me, but during the season, you and I don't get days off necessarily. I don't. I have a Monday through Friday
We just
show.
work, Colin.
Sunday we work. So I gave myself Saturday off. I looked on the schedule. I wanted to watch LSU Bama. I watched the first half and it was over. So I got a feeling pretty quickly that Brian Kelly's team just wasn't up for it. That's not how you should play at home in your third year against Alabama, your primary rival. But I was thinking about this, is that the concern for college football creating even a 12-team playoff, that it would neuter the regular season. And it's interesting. If I said to you, what has been the best college football game this season? I think most of us would go Ohio State, Oregon was like unbelievable. But I can count on one hand the games I've said, like I thought Texas, Georgia would be great. It wasn't. I thought LSU, Bama could be great. It wasn't. I thought Penn State, Ohio State was fine, but I didn't think either team played particularly well. They had opportunities. And I will say this, I love college football.
USC Michigan was really fun at the time. It didn't age well, but that game at the time felt huge.
Yeah, I agree. And they'll be close games. But I will say, whereas the NFL has 14 games a weekend, and usually about 6 to 7 are pretty damn good. I mean, we got some, Kansas City, Denver, Washington, Pittsburgh. Those were really good games. Hell, even Buffalo and the Colts for a while was good. San Francisco, Tampa was exceptional. And I think Rams, Miami tomorrow will be good. So you'll get 6 or 7 NFL games every weekend out of 14. I do think it has changed my mindset, is that the games don't feel as definitive or punitive. And so right now, my take is everybody's going to have a loss. I'm not going a mile deep on a strong opinion on a loss. I think Texas is good. They had a really bad Saturday, got into their feels. Georgia was pissed off. Georgia lost to Ole Miss. They're a limited team offensively. But I will say that the college football playoff, and it's done this to college basketball, where the college basketball now is a bracket. It's got 3 great weeks and a lot of stuff that nobody watches. I see the numbers. I do think the playoff was necessary for the growth of the sport. But I feel like Saturday I said, hey, I'm going to take the afternoon off, spend it with my wife, and just take a deep breath, exercise, just get out in Chicago. Let's go have a wild, fun day. And I didn't feel I missed anything. Now, I love college football. You do too. Do you? I'm feeling a little different, that the regular season doesn't feel as urgent to me, but I think I'll get the payoff for the last month.
I'm not, when it comes to sports topics, a moral high horse guy. I'm not someone that like pounds my chest about certain things that bother people, in terms of, let's use college as an example, the NIL, the transfer portal. For the most part, I'm like, whatever, things change, you deal with it. Miller Moss was benched this week, and immediately he just quits. I'm going in the transfer portal. Like that happened. And even Lincoln's like, yeah, it's just a new opportunity. This guy has been with these players now for years with the team. I do think something's really out of whack. That was like a symbolic moment that this guy finally gets benched. He struggled. And it's like, I just quit. I'm just leaving the team. Like, and then you watch some of these games. Like, Georgia's not nearly as good as they once were. Because people just, the moment shit gets tough, it's like, I just quit.
Yeah.
I think Brady talked about it in the offseason, was like, when I went to Michigan, like for 5 years, it wasn't easy. Shit gets hard. But he represented every kid for the history of college football. Like, I want to kill my coach. I want to strangle my offensive coordinator. I just want to quit football. And you just couldn't. And I do think you watch the just what's going on in college football. I don't know how to fix it, but like that just something's off. Like, people get benched. It's football. You were playing like shit. We're 4-5. We can't win a game. It's like, I just quit. So it's like, does no one means anything? Clearly, you're getting some money. Like, it's just out of whack. It really is. And that's why I think it represents all these guys moving nonstop, which has its positives, but also has, like, that for me was a story like, I don't know, something just feels icky. Like, there has to be, and I think whenever these college coaches say something, most of the media is like, you just money hungry. You guys always had the advantage. Guys, yes, we get it. They've always made money. They also generate all the money for the athletic department. Look at how much coaches make in the NFL. They're valuable commodity. Players are too. But if Deebo Samuel's mad today, he can't just go tomorrow like, I quit. I'm leaving. It's like, no, Deebo, you're under contract. Well, these guys are getting paid. It's just way out of whack. And for the first time, it was just a moment. I don't care about Miller Moss. I'm not even like, this USC team turns me off. But that moment, I do think he's not alone. I'm not trying to pick on him. He represents a lot of guys. Happens all over. Happens with guys we probably don't know because he might be a guard or a safety. Happens at every program. You get benched in the middle of the season. It's like, I quit. I'm just out. And then I saw the South Carolina has a defensive end right now who's got a chance to be like Myles Garrett. He's an elite freshman. And I saw, this week, maybe on like Thursday or Friday, that like his value in NIL, because of how good he is going to go to like $2 to $5 million this next season. Well, how does he know that? Because if you think about it, like Oregon, just look at the teams with all the NIL, they're already contacting him, which I don't blame. Like, there are no rules. It's a lawless land right now, but something's off. And I do think that some of these coaches, like, listen, we got no problem people getting paid, but there has to be, I can't just tomorrow be like, Colin, I'm out. Like, I don't know. We have contracts. Isn't that the way the business works? And I feel like the media roots for all these guys to get money, rightfully so. But like that's not how any business works ever. Like, there are contracts. People have to follow rules. There just are no rules. Yeah. Even the coaches that, like, why'd Billy Napier not get fired? Well, because they have to pay him $25 million. They can. He's under contract. It is what it is. Where players just like the moment shit. And I get it. Like, if you're and listen, I came from Fresno State. We would have lost all of our good players back in 2010. Boise, they got very lucky to keep Genty. He was offered $1 million and turned it down, but he was an outlier. I just think the situation of like, I do think it turns, it's just out of whack. That's all I can say. I still enjoy the games. Like, I love Colorado is like one of the best stories. What Deion's done, Warren Sapp, that defensive line. I watched 3 games yesterday. Colorado, Ole Miss in Georgia, and I had a lot of money on LSU and I turned it off basically in the third quarter. But those games, like, I still enjoy the pageantry between it all, but sometimes you're just like, what's going on here? Yeah.
I feel, I think,
like, what's Lincoln supposed to do? Not bench Miller Moss? Like, people get benched. It happens. Sports.
Yeah. I mean, Lincoln and Les Miles are really good coaches, and both are really struggling. And I think it is really hard to build a culture when you have to walk on eggshells around players. I mean, Sean Payton can dog cuss a guy. Where are you going to go? Now, the NFL, in the NBA, you have to walk on eggshells around pro basketball players.
Yeah, they'll get you fired immediately. They don't like you.
But in the NFL, you don't. In college football is becoming the NBA, where coaches are terrified to alienate players. And so I think for guys like, it's Harbaugh was really lucky. By the time he built them into a power, the world changed. And then he had a couple of years with NIL, but he had established a junior, senior dominant roster. And then he left. And listen, Jay Wright and Roy Williams and Mike Kay, get me out of here. So Bill Self is having to deal with some of this. So I think college sports, the NIL.
The dude at Virginia, who's like one of the highest level guys ever, just quit. He's like, this is insane.
Yeah, I think it's much easier to build a culture in the NFL and turn things around immediately. Harbaugh, D'Amico Ryans, because the coach has the leverage. College sports now, the star player has the leverage, and it's just simply it's harder to build a culture when you're walking on eggshells. And I've known programs. I've talked to coaches about this that they can't announce. They have to wait until a certain date in August to announce a starting left tackle or a starting running back because they're afraid the player
Guys
will
gonna leave.
transfer. So what happens is now college coaches are much less honest with the players. They won't give them bad news early. The depth chart, they don't want it published. So you're getting a really inauthentic, dishonest relationship between college coach and college player because college player will bolt. And not even the great ones, the good ones will bolt.
Well, I think Loxley told a story at Maryland that his third string running back came in after the spring game and said he wanted $200,000. He said, Godspeed, go get it. What are we talking about? And I think going back to the coaching thing, I think you've been talking to NFL players for decades. They will all say, my relationship, like they love their position coach or their coordinator, especially the good ones, but you get to develop a real relationship. So he can tell me good and bad, whatever. Well, how do I develop a real relationship if I'm terrified if I say the wrong thing? Especially there's a difference of dealing with a 28-year-old and an 18 or 19-year-old. Let's face it, we're just as men, we're not as mature at that age, much more emotional. And even if something that is correct, I'm not going to listen to. So it's a much more difficult situation. And before all those guys, most of the older players in the NFL, they all attribute like the best thing going through some adversity, not getting a starting spot as a 5-star. I had to earn my way. It made me a better player. Now it's like, I'm out. See ya. And that just can't be healthy for the development. I think it's something to keep an eye on for the draft is like these teams think the draft now are not as deep because you got guys bouncing all around. The development is not as streamlined.
Yep.
It's just out of whack. And I'm not some anti paying the guys or anything, but we have to. And I love football. I mean, I could watch football all day long as I do, lucky enough to get paid to do it. But when I saw that Miller Moss thing, I'm like, I don't know. Something is just, this is not. Caleb, his coach left, followed him. I think you see a lot of times, like Bo Nix was told, we're going with, or no, Dylan Gabriel, like, hey, we're going with Jackson Arnold. Some things is like totally understandable. And then there's like Miller Moss acting like, you think you're Matt Leinart or something? Your team's 4-5, and you have been shitty in some of these big moments. And you have an offense, and you're just, where are you going to go? Like San Diego State? Like who's lining up for you? But I just thought the headline was just, I don't know. Something just feels a little weird.
John Middlekauff, his podcast is 3 and Out, former scout with the Philadelphia Eagles. Another robust, dynamic Sunday. And we'll talk soon, buddy.
See you, Colin.